All right, welcome back. We have our Hello World app, but that doesn't look very cool. We want to make our Robo Friends app. So in this video, we're going to get started by building our first component. If we go back here, we remember that we have the terminal on the right-hand side, and we just ran npm start, and create React apps checks all the files for us, make sure there's no errors. It says that our app is defined but never used, so let's comment this out. Again, command / save this, and you'll see that everything's working fine. Now, you may have a few questions just on this index.js file. One, we see that we're importing React, but how come that's working? We remember that it didn't work before. We had to use require and then browserify. Again, React has Webpack underneath the hood that does the bundling for us. So we're allowed to use imports. As long as we keep these at the top of the file, we can import whatever other files we want or whatever packages we want. We also see that there's two things, React and React DOM. If you remember, React is a Vue library. So this is the little robot that we remember from the previous video. It's the core of the package that does the DOM manipulation for us. But as I said before, React can be used in multiple places, not just the browser. It can be used for mobile devices, it can be used for virtual reality, and you can plug and play different libraries like this based on what screen you're rendering to. So React DOM is used for the DOM websites. So it's the glue of React, but we can have something like React Native that actually renders to mobile phones. We also have import index.css, and this is a new syntax. Well, React allows us to add CSS not just in one file, but for each different component. If we go to app.js, well, we have app.css that describes the app. If we go to index.js, well, we have index.css that has its own styles. And these styles will only apply to whatever components index.js renders. And the way we use it is we just say import. And then unlike a React package where we just say the name of the package and it automatically knows to check the node modules folder, we have to tell it where index.css lives. And this syntax of / means it's in the same directory. So it's saying check in the source folder, index.css should be there. Okay, and finally we see register service worker. And this is an advanced topic that we won't cover in this course, but think of service workers as a new feature that allows our apps to become faster and potentially work offline. It's something that we don't need to concern ourselves with. So for now, you can comment this out and it will still work, but we'll keep it here just because Create React App gives it to us for free. The things that we really care about though is, well, this line over here. This whole thing is what React does. It's saying, I want the React DOM package to use the function render. And this render is, I want you to render whatever this is. But if you remember before we had app. And well, this isn't really an HTML tag, is it? We've just created this from, it looks like the same directory, there's something called app. And it doesn't have a .js file like we see it over here. And that is because it automatically says that if there's no .css or any type after it, well, it assumes that it's JavaScript. But this will work as well, as you can see. Okay, so let's go to app.js file and see why we can use this HTML tag that we've created. If we go to app.js file, well, again, we see that we're importing something. We're doing something called destructuring here and getting component as well. And we have a few files like logo.svg and app.css that we're importing. And again, we see that our syntax is a little bit off, so make sure that we change our files to JavaScript Babel. And it looks like class app extends component that comes with React, and this is just standard syntax. This renders. Remember, a component always has the rule that it must render at least something. And the way we do that is we return a HTML piece of the website. So we see over here, welcome to React to get started, edit. Well, that's exactly what it says over here. That is the power of React. We're creating our own custom components, our own custom HTML tags that we can just add. And if you remember the one-way data flow picture, we have one parent that has children. So app has children. But you know what? Let's build our own component to make this point clear. Instead of having hello world in here, let's create a component called hello. And it's a self-closing tag, so we want to have the backslash. And in here, instead of saying import app, let's do import hello from, we'll call it hello.js. And you'll notice that it's capitalized here. Well, if you're building a component, the standard is that it's capitalized. So it'll be called hello.js. If we save this, we'll get an error. It says module not found, can't resolve.hello, because the file doesn't exist. So let's create one. I'm going to say new file, hello.js. There you go. We have a new hello.js file, and it's compiled successfully. If we go to the website, well, look at that. It actually even gives us error on the website. And that's why Create React App is just so awesome. It shows you exactly what the errors are without opening up the console right here. Again, we have nothing built right now in hello, so we need to create it. Let's use the app.js as an example. It looks like we need to import React and component. So we need to say import React component from React. Okay. And the reason we're doing this, again, this is destructuring. Instead of doing React.component, we can now just do component, and it means the same thing. Again, looking at app.js, it looks like we say class, our component name extends component. Let's do that. Class, we'll call this hello. Again, that's what our component's called. Extends component. And again, remember to change our JavaScript to Babel. And if you remember, one rule is that we always want to have a render function. And within this render function, we tell it what we want to return. Well, we want to return the hello world example. We can say h1 hello world h1. Okay, let's see what happens when I do this. I save, and it says export default imported as hello was not found. Well, it's because we're not exporting this. Remember, if we want another file to use it, we have to export. And we use export default when we're just exporting one thing. If we use the word default, that means this file only exports one thing, and that is the app. So I can say export default hello. Let's save. Looks like it's working. Let's see what happens in our website. Hello world. We've just created our very first component. How cool is that? Now, right now we only have one line, but what if I wanted to do something like div, wrapping it in a div, and maybe underneath here I'll say a paragraph that says, welcome to React. If I save this, I get another error. And it's because we're just giving it multiple lines here and returns expecting a single thing. We need to wrap this in brackets like this in order to have JavaScript say, this is an expression, evaluate this entire thing. If we save this, looks like it's working, and then hello world, welcome to React. Very cool. Within here, if you remember, if we import .hello.css, we can create whatever CSS styles we want. But we need to create that file first. So let's do new file. Oop, and I need to add an O in here. The new file name will be hello.css. Now in hello.css, I can just say that the H1, and this is just standard CSS, will have background of red. I'm going to save this as well. Everything looks good. And look at that. But you know what? To make this faster, and because we've gone over CSS, I want to show you a cool package called Tachyons. And Tachyons allows us to have, similar to Bootstrap, predefined class names that we can just add to components to make things look really, really nice. So let's do that. I'm going to close this and say npm install Tachyons. All right, it's added a package. We can check by going to package.json. We see that tachyons are there. And we can use tachyons very easily by just going to index.js file and saying import tachyons. And now we have access to this package. Just to show you what tachyons are, if I go to tachyons styles, it gives us little classes that we can use that, for example, text center will just say TC. And as long as we have tachyons installed and we use TC as class name, it will align our text. So now that we have tachyons and its index.js file, we can just say within here, class equals F1 for font1 and text center. If I save, I have to do npm start here, make sure that our server is running so that we can check our changes. And we get hello world, welcome to React. But there's actually one trick here. If you open up the console, although this worked, I get a warning saying invalid DOM property class. Did you mean class name? And React's really, really good at giving you errors. And you might be asking yourself, why class name instead of class? Because if I save this, go back, I no longer have that error. Why is that? Well, up until this point, we've kind of just written HTML, but this is a JavaScript file. How are we able to do this? This is actually something called JSX. Part of React is that it allows you to write this HTML-like syntax in your JavaScript. And you might be asking yourself, one, doesn't that break the rule of separation of concerns? And two, how are we even able to add HTML to JavaScript? To answer the first question, separation of concerns, React has the idea of components, and that is, it's better to have functionality and styles per component so that each component is its own separate universe, and you just add these components. And the idea of separation of concerns with React is that components, well, they're concerned about themselves, nothing else. So it changes the paradigm here. And it's kind of nice, right? I can just look at the hello component. I know exactly what it's doing. I can look at the CSS. And anytime I need to make a change, I just need to worry about the files that contain the hello CSS and JavaScript. The second thing is this thing called JSX. Underneath the hood, what React is doing is actually letting you use this syntax, but they're not actual HTML tags. Remember what I said about the virtual DOM and how React creates its own object and then looks at the DOM and compares it and says, I need to change this, and it does it for us? React uses JSX to create their virtual DOM, their fake DOM that they built based on what we give it to them. Then they look at this virtual DOM and the real DOM and say, this part has changed. I'm going to change the DOM now based on the virtual DOM. And that is why React is really, really fast. It creates these objects, which is really fast in JavaScript, and only changes what needs to be done in the DOM. So just get used to it. It's awkward at first, but again, as long as you wrap it in a bracket, you can write here HTML, as well as your own custom components, such as hello, that we used in index.js file. And now maybe it makes sense why we can't say class here. Because class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. Class is part of the language that JavaScript uses. So if this is JavaScript, the fact that we're saying class here doesn't make sense. In the old version of React, this actually broke React, but now it gives us a nice error. Because this is JavaScript and not HTML, we have to say class name. And it's something that you'll get used to. You'll get tricked up with at the beginning, but it becomes easy after a while. All right, the last thing I'm going to show you is the power of React. Within the hello component, I can now add something called props or properties. And these props can be called anything. Think of them as HTML attributes. I can say greeting equals, and then within here, I want to wrap it in curly brackets. And this is a JavaScript expression, whatever I want. I can say hello React Ninja. And if I save this, I get an error saying that no useless concatenation. So it's saying that, hey, why are you even adding things? You can just put them all together. So it's smart enough to even give you suggestions or warnings of when you're doing something that's not clean. But for now, for demonstration purposes, this is fine. Now that I've given it what we call a greeting prop to hello, I now have access in hello.js to props. I can now say this dot props dot greeting. I save this, go back, and I say hello React Ninja. You see, with this syntax, it's saying that this object, which is hello, has properties, props, that is greeting. I know this is confusing. It's just a syntax you have to get used to. But now we have access to whatever property and whatever property value we get from hello. This is a power that will come in handy later on, but I want you to build your own component here and get comfortable with the syntax. It is really, really powerful, and once you get used to it, you can build any components you want. Okay, one final thing. This syntax might be kind of difficult, but I want to show you that this is actually just a function. If I do const hello, and in here, this function accepts props. If I do an arrow function here, wrap it in curly brackets, and instead of doing this render, I just simply return if I save this, well, I'm getting an error because this.props.greetings doesn't really exist because it's not an object anymore. It is a function. So I don't need the props. It receives props, whatever parameters we give it, and props.greeting is acceptable to us. I save this, go back, and look at that. It's working. It's just functions. Think of React as that. We're just creating these functions that take parameters, and these parameters, which are given by giving attributes and values, are just being rendered. I have access to props.greeting. If I give it another prop here called, let's say, dog, then I'll have props.dog available to me as well. And again, we get a nice little error saying that component, we're grabbing this, but we're not really using it, and we're using unnecessary string concatenation. Again, really useful. As you can see, fairly simple to pick up. In the next lesson, we're going to start actually working on our RoboFriends app now that we have the basics. I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye.